Hi, welcome to All Things Good, a podcast that looks for the good in the world. I was just thinking recently about friends that I've had in my life and what a gift they are to me. And I don't, sometimes I wonder even how we became friends and just show up. I have friends, I have one friend, he's just a really good listener. I have another friend, he's a really good encourager. I have another friend, he's like, how can I help you? all I'm just so grateful for that. Well, one of my friends that I've known for quite a while is Cindy Manson, and she's here to join us to talk about goodness and how goodness has worked itself out in her life. Uh, Cindy, talk about where you've seen goodness recently.
Recently, I have been doing some home projects.
Okay.
And when people show up and help with projects that you yourself really don't want to do or have no skill to do, I love that. That is, in my book, a really high goodness level. But people who, somebody bought me a coffee in line at Starbucks the other day that I have never seen. The car ahead of me paid for it. Just people who smile at you. You can see goodness if you're looking.
So, Cindy, I just like I said, tell us about your upbringing, what it was like as a child for you, the family you grew up in. Kind of set the stage for where your life headed from there.
I grew up in small towns, large family. Initially, we were a family with 7 kids, and then as time went on, we became a family of 10 kids. Of course, when you have that many children, and I think even in the time period, there wasn't always a lot of money. So we had the typical economy meals, one package of hamburger fed
For
everybody.
Wow.
When
Did
you
they add stuff to it to make it
when you put
spread?
it in a casserole, hamburger can go a long ways.
I don't like casseroles that much.
So we just grew up in very very basic household. We went to church as Lutherans, and every Sunday we were in church, and that's what we did.
Did everybody get along in your family pretty well, or was it just kind of typical sibling rivalries
It
and
was
stuff?
so typical sibling rivalry
Yeah.
because there was the 2 boys that kind of did their thing, and then there was the younger girls and the older girls, and some of us played Barbies and some of us. So there was not any major arguments, but we were definitely different personalities.
You had a pretty major thing happen in your life that changed the trajectory of where your life was probably going to head. Tell us about that tragedy, and then we'll go from there, how that changed the trajectory of your life.
When I was 10, I was getting ready to go to school the first day after Christmas vacation, and my flannel nightgown caught fire.
Oh, I think that's a parent's worst fear is that their kids would either fall or get in a fire. They'll harm to a child. I can't think of anything more scary to a parent, especially nowadays. Parents are really hypersensitive
Yeah.
to it.
So we're sitting on the couch and waiting for the ambulance to come. And my dad, I'm sure that he didn't mean me to hear it, but said, "What am I going to do with a daughter that looks like you?"
Well, go back to what you were standing next to,
A space heater.
and your garment caught on fire.
And I thought, wow, this heater works really good. I'm in another room and it's still warm.
Oh,
And then
so what happened right away after you're on fire? Really, right?
somebody said, "You're on fire." And unfortunately, I ran.
Oh,
Because what else do you do to get away from something? And by the time I was knocked to the floor and put out, it was a problem.
that's when your father made that statement.
Yeah,
The ambulance is on its way.
right.
Were you in a lot of pain?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're in a lot of pain, and probably doesn't look like you're conscious. And then your dad says, "What am I going to do?" What did he say?
With a daughter that looks like you.
How did So you're in physical pain. How did that affect you? Maybe not even just that day, but the rest?
That was something that stuck with me for quite a while. I kept thinking, is that all I am? Is something to look good? Or I have to have a cuteness factor to grow up? What does that do with my confidence and all of that? That you love me only because I'm cute? All of those things went through my head.
So that, that's a tragedy. People have had tragedies. Maybe some people that are listening have gone through tragedies. And, how do you recover from that? It's a question that I would have. You went back to school eventually?
Went back to school. I
How did
was
that work out for you?
4 months in the hospital. And of course, as you go back to school, I was in grade school. And kids can be a little cruel with
Yeah.
someone unusual. And there were names, and there were not as friendly a time at school as it should have been. But you go through school because that's what the government tells you. You should have to go to school. We didn't have homeschool then. And so you make it through, and you just do what you can do.
You could have gone into a funk, but it took you a while, but you kind of had a shift in your thinking. Tell us about the process that kind of
It
got you
took
from
me
there.
a long while because as I'm growing up, going through school, you get the comments from people in stores from the aside of, oh, don't look.
Don't look at her.
And so I would say that it took years, but I could either choose to live in that place and be miserable for the rest of my however many years I stayed on this earth, or I could do something about that and change that attitude, change that perspective. And it was probably junior, senior high school that I said, this is not going to stay in a depression. We're gonna do something about this.
So if you were going to say something and people face tragedy, what would you say? How do you get out of that?
I would say that you absolutely have a right to be depressed. Look at what happened, but don't stay there. Do whatever you need to do to turn that around. And it's not going to be 3 days and it's going to be perfect. Might be 3 years. But every day, keep turning towards the direction you want to go.
So what did you do with that? You had a shift in your thinking and you put your energy somewhere. What did you, and eventually get out of yourself, so to speak? What did you do?
I started doing things with kids. As time goes on and things are changing and I'm moving out on my own, didn't really have a direction initially, but as things changed, I started working with kids in 4-H. I had animals, dogs primarily in the beginning. Dogs were always a part of what I thought in my head my future was going to be.
So you love animals?
Wow.
Whoa. When did you have a desire for animals? Was it then, or have you had it long
It's
term?
always been there
Yeah.
because when I was in high school, I was part of FFA and I had cows that I showed in the fair. And my secret desire was that I was going to grow up and own a pulled Hereford ranch and raise collies.
Well, you kind of, you help young people and you got involved with animals. Their love for animals, your love for animals went together. So you've always had a love for dogs. You poured yourself into positive things. But there was one love you had, you shared with me, and you got a little picture of it on your chain. Tell us about.
I'm a horse girl.
No kidding.
I have wanted a horse as long as I can remember. And at one point, they told me that if I got out of the hospital, we'll find a way to get a horse.
Who said that to you?
Family,
Oh, okay. Yeah. You get better, you will give you a horse.
pretty much. It was kind of that implied little, yeah, whatever you want. So I held on to that, and I never got the horse.
Well, somebody offered me a horse. That would not be a good thing. Like,
Well,
yeah, whatever. What am I supposed to do with this creature? I rode a horse once, and it was all the horses are following each other and out to somewhere, and then when you're on the way back, they're all running very fast to get back to the food. It's like, I thought, this is not fun. I don't want to be with this animal. And what if he kicks me off? But you loved your horse, and it stayed. Your desire for a horse stayed with you, and as you progress your life, you did that for a while. Then you end up with some relationships, some that didn't work out, and some that did work out. You want to talk about that a little bit?
well, I have been married more than once. My first marriage was fine, but it did end. And I was at a dog daycare as an employee, and this man would continually bring his golden retriever in. She was a lovely little dog, and I was getting ready to leave the business. I handed this gentleman my business card and said, if your dog ever needs a place to stay while you go on vacation, I would love you to give me a call, and I'd be happy to take care of her.
No. Was this like more than just taking care of it for you? Were you kind of like,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever really thought about that question, but I loved the dog. She was very sweet. Her name was Sweet Pea, so how could you not like a dog that was named Sweet Pea? So he takes my business card, and he kind of does a little jig and says, this will facilitate me asking you out for coffee.
Oh, so romantic.
Yeah.
Facilitate. I'd like to facilitate a date with you.
That was the kind of gentleman he was.
Okay.
But I did go on that date. And as time passed, I found what a wonderful man he was. And he told me one time, I'm in church in the balcony, 9 a.m. every Sunday. And I visited him there once, and we kind of continued on. And we did get married. An amazing man that turned me back towards God. I still believed in God, but I was not attending church regularly.
You weren't necessarily close to the Lord at that time.
No, I didn't blame him for my trouble, but I kept thinking, why didn't you fix this for me? And my husband, Don, kind of turned me back in that direction. So much of his personality was giving to others. And you can't very well be surrounded by that kind of personality without it becoming infectious for you too.
You both, he was definitely a giver, and you are a giver. I mean, you're always donating your time, investing in other people. That's who you are. And God just put you together in a great relationship.
He did.
But you still had this longing for a horse, right?
I still had this.
And no horse.
No horse. And, sometimes they say that good things come to those that wait. And boy, I was getting tired of waiting. So I'm continuing on. We're married. I've been working with 4-H and doing things with kids, teaching them dog training and all of these things. And I had a dream about a horse that I saw in my dream. I saw a picture. And lo and behold, that came to pass.
The dream you had came to pass.
The dream I had, I saw that picture in an ad. I was ecstatic. And I told my husband I was going to go look at this horse, and isn't this exciting? And I am so into this. And he said, we can't afford a horse. Okay. That did not actually make me very happy. And I spent the day in a huge funk and went to look at the horse anyway. A couple of days later, him and I are getting ready to go to church, and I looked him directly in the eye and said, I will do anything it takes. I will give up going to Joann's and Michael's. I will give up going to Starbucks. I will not buy any fast food forever if I could have this horse.
Well, that was like a line in the sand.
Pretty much. And he looked at me, and he didn't say anything. And then he said, okay. And the rest is history. I had a horse, I had an amazing husband, and I had an outlet for all of these things to turn around and make into a better place, to walk away from that darkness that I had lived in the beginning of my life. Now to change it around and give back and pour out to someone else.
I love your story and how God's directed you. You are, as I see you, just an amazing illustration of goodness in your
Thank you.
life, just how God's taken you. And I love that you had that dream, and you basically continued to talk about that dream to everybody you knew, and then something clicked and it worked out.
Yeah.
And God gave you the desire of your heart.
He so did. I also remember a friend of my husband's at the time cautioned me not to get so wrapped up in this horse that I'd finally gotten that it wasn't healthy to love something more than God. And I was really stunned by that statement. And I said, what are you talking about? God gave me this horse. He wants me to love her. Oh, God gave you this horse? I said, absolutely. If it weren't for God, none of this would have lined up and worked out. And she was truly, truly a gift.
That cut out the naysayers.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast, All Things Good. I am continuing looking for good things. In your story, it really speaks highly about how goodness can pervade, not only that we receive it, but we actually start living it out.
Absolutely.